Right, Coach Helen for UFit Studio. Change your story. It follows on from, I did a live on Tuesday this week. I don't remember the days of the week now. It's fantastic. And what I do in them. World is moving forward. I talked about changing your state. This is a separate, and yet follows on from that. And in that live, I talked about how changing your physical or your physicality as well as your words is a huge way of changing what your current state is. Your state being a state of emotion, generally speaking. Making massive changes to your physicality and or your language is a fantastic way of basically changing the state you're in currently. And this is a particular element of this, which is the internal story, which I've again talked about before, and yet because of what is happening with so much uncertainty at the minute, and the big C. I'm going to drop the C bomb now, live on Facebook and Instagram. You ready for this? The big C, change. I know you knew exactly that. I know you all knew exactly what I was going to say then was change. Obviously. Changes are coming. I can see it coming over the horizon. That big C is coming towards us. And what that is creating is, as I Mystic Meg predicted in probably every month since March, a sense of unease and fear. How that's being portrayed between people is very different, understandably. I'm not going to go into specific examples necessarily today, because I think there's so much C bombing. Change. It's me doing loads of C bombs. Change. So many C bombing going off. That I think there's a sense of so much unease and fear, that loads of internal storytelling is happening. I've had a number of conversations this week, today especially, where that story and the word overwhelmed came out, which I've done live on the word overwhelmed. Even listen to watch that one. That's a great one. Also, blow my own trumpet. And part of him feeling overwhelmed, state of feeling overwhelmed, is also about the story that we're telling. At the moment, not being dramatic, maybe a little bit to make a point, the story that we're telling, or the story that needs changing, in particular, and talking about this life, it's always the worst case scenario that I'm coming across with a lot of people just currently, as in, there's a visual of the future, or a certain scenario in the future they vision themselves in, and it's a bit like the opening scenes of a horror movie to some degree. Keep with me on this one. There's some absolutely helpless person, we won't say female to make it of like 90s horror. There's a hopeless person in a dark room, and there's lots of noises going on, and they're like, and they do something really silly, like, they turn all the lights off and don't walk back into a room, walk into a room backwards. You love that in a horror movie. And that's the kind of sense of dread I think that some not all, some people have, going into the next few weeks. And there's in that state of fear of backing into a room in a horror story, there's a loop. I've mentioned the loop before. The loop is almost like, if you imagine that most fearful moment of watching that horror movie where you're like, what the hell are you doing? Why are you backing into a room backwards, you fucking idiot? That sense of dread is where someone sits in the loop in their head. Okay, so if that loop is changing environment, I am going to go into specific because it makes it easier. If we're talking about children going back to school, for example, or going back to work, the loop, or that moment, that sensation, that feeling of fear of backing into the room, is the same moment that person imagines the feeling of walking into work for the first time, or dropping the kids off at school for the first time. That sense of stomach churning, just dropping off the fairground ride, feeling the moment, we're like, oh. And the thing is that moment plays in a loop in someone's head as they reimagine themselves going into that environment and that fear moment. And part of that, as I've just set up that scenario, quite bluntly, is a story. So the story would be, let's take the horror movie, or just go for it. Young woman is alone in house in the dead of night for no apparent reason. She hears a smashing of a glass in the back room and she walks in backwards with all lights turned off. Yeah, that is a scenario. Take that, and what happens is someone will play a story of, right, and we get up on Monday morning. I'm not going to like getting up. I'm going to hate the alarm going off. The alarm going off is going to make me cry because it will still be dark and I will not like it. And I'll make me think winter's coming. Do you see how I'm going this? Once upon a time, it was Monday morning and the alarm went off. And I thought, God, I'm going to have to go. I'm going to work. I get out of the car. I see someone for the first time. Do you like my acting skills, by the way? Don't matter. It's a bit like the opening scene of Casualty when you don't know what's going to quite happen. You think it's going to be a disaster. Like watching me act. Or, in all fairness, that is pretty much saying it out loud. When someone is playing a loop of a story in their head, it's a bit like that. It's like the opening. Please, if anybody's not seen Casualty, I'm sorry. This is not the best choice of explanation. However, it's like something bad is about to happen, and you're watching the opening scene, waiting for someone to fall off a ladder or electrocute themselves. And that is that just short scene or section is a story that a person or client or even all people, right, even myself, will play that scene on loop, and that becomes their story. Now, the thing is about playing it so often over a period of time, and it doesn't have to be, when I say a period of time, I'm not talking weeks and months, although it might have been playing in the background gently, a bit like the Jaws music, in June, July, August, end of August, it's been playing quietly in the background, the loop, and then as we're getting closer to it, depending on the individual and the scenario, actually the loop or the story is playing full kilt, continuously. And the outcome is, and I'm literally, this is how it is, the loop or the story becomes that person's reality. They've envisioned it that much, they've at that point put texture, sounds, smell, detail, everything. They've literally created the backdrop of this story in their head. This loop is now playing so strongly. The emotions, the fear becomes so real. It is real to that person. Now, as a coach, when I'm talking to people on the phone, I'm even watching it because I'm on a video call and I'm watching this story as it happens, or I can hear it. I'm on the phone and they're talking me through, because I will say, okay, let's do it. Talk me through your worst case scenario. Talk me through what this story is that you're telling yourself for avoiding this scenario or avoiding the big C. Change, right? Is that right? Yeah, it's that way. Big C, change head. Look, my hands are that big. Distracted. And that's what happens though. It becomes their reality, and then you ask them to replay the reality, and I can watch it and listen to it like a film. I can tell they've given it real thought. They've given it so much thought that it does become real. And that's because it becomes reality, someone will perceive that they can't change that. There is no way of changing that, because they've imagined it so much that it becomes so real that they're unable to change it. Now, a bit like I said on Tuesday about changing your state, it is also important to change that story, right? As you've changed the story, you change your reality. You're knee deep in it so far that it's so real that the only thing you can do at this point, or has to be done, is for someone to change their actual story, and therefore their reality, right? Because reality is that not all life is like an opening scene of Casualty, I would hope, right? Unless you work in A&E, If Nipa was watching, he'd be like, yes, it is like that. However, actually, in reality, it's not. So how do you change it, right? Because I always talk about this. What is it? Why do we do it? Okay, here's the important thing. Why do we do it? Why do we create this? It keeps, do you know what? I'll tell you why we do this. We do it because actually it almost adversely keeps us safe to believe that this is the worst case scenario. It actually protects us. Why? If we perceive this is a worst case scenario, we will not put ourselves in a situation to find out. You will not be backing into a room with the lights off in the middle of the night when you think there's an intruder in your house, right? You will avoid that behaviour. Likewise, if there's not a reason for you to leave the home and do something, you will avoid doing it. Why? Because you've replayed the worst case scenario that many times in your head, it becomes the reality. So why put yourself in that danger? No, you're not. You're not putting that danger or actually experience the movie you've been playing over and over again. So you can do everything within your power to avoid it. And so people will. So how do you change that? I've done this over the last couple of weeks four times. It's one of two things that have been successful that I have so far tried. Well, there are other ways of doing it. Firstly, yes, I've talked about physically changing. So if you find yourself going in to start to play the movie, to physically move away from whatever you're doing or wherever you're in, to some degree distract, but physically change your position. Check your words. How many times I've talked about this? And yet, the most effective way I've found so far is to challenge somebody when they start to go into a language loop of, I can't do it. I can't go to work. I can't take the kids to school. I can't do it. Words. Anything like should. We talk about should all the time. Shoulda, coulda, woulda. That's coming again. Those buzzwords. I will challenge a client to say, right, I don't even want you to send me your food for the next 7 days. I don't want to focus on you being on Met 4 or 5 times a week. What I want you to do is actually keep a conscious awareness of your language and start to break the story you're telling yourself. Because as soon as you hear it, I want you to stop and change the words and make it, wherever it is, the reverse. Come back 7 days later and like, it's like they've started playing Disney. And it can be that extreme. Like literally over a 7 day period, I'll talk to the same client and like, wow, that really did hit home with you, didn't you? Like, she was like, yeah, I just didn't realize how negative I was being and how worst case scenario being. And actually, if I just stopped and challenged myself, there's absolutely nothing there to be scared of. There's no horror movie really playing. There is no casualty or electrocution about to happen at any point. It's a story that we play that it's going to. So as you start to change the words, you actually change the loop. Yeah. Now, whether you call that, look how it all ties in again. Whether you call it affirmations or whatever you call it, or however I've described it before, part of changing your story is also changing the loop of things you tell yourself. I've also touched on that before. Except this is kind of on a very particular scale because of what's happening at the minute. Essentially, as long as you keep changing the story, you keep changing the reality you create for yourself. And there's the challenge. If you're not continuously changing your story, you're not changing your reality, you will stay in the same state of fear. So you're still in the same state of, it's too dangerous, I don't want to do it, I can't do it. It's all based on fear, like we talked about. I've done fear as one in itself, and there's going to be a whole section of those coming up, right? So the main thing is that how to do it, keep changing the loop of what you're telling yourself or challenging your own loop. Become conscious of it. It's amazing how many people I've met who go through life not even knowing that it's playing, not even aware of the reason why they're not moving forward or dealing with the C-bombs is because their loop is so ingrained, their story is so ingrained with their behaviours and their emotional states that they are completely oblivious until I start to dig it out and start to work with them and start to understand what it is that's keeping them away from change. That story, that loop is so deep and so ingrained. And I've heard it described as it's like a CD. This is the best one I've heard. An internal story is a loop, is like a CD of the same song that's on repeat constantly. And the challenge is that if you want to change it, you can't shove another CD on top. If you're too young to remember CDs, I'm sorry, I can't help you. If you've got a CD playing, you can't change the song by shoving another CD on top. You have to take out that CD that you're listening to and replace it. You cannot make both play at the same time. You've got to stop and you've got to put the other one on, right? And that is how ingrained it can be. It's like just ingrained on that laser disc is the story that we play, that loop, over and over and over again. If you're at a certain age and need another analogy, you just let me know. Vinyl's made a comeback, right? Same analogy. Vinyl, needle, plays the same track until you change the vinyl. You can't stick another one on top and hope for the best because it'll just still jump, right? So, any other analogies, just let me know, depending on your age, right? So, recap. Following up from Tuesday about change your state, it's about changing your story. It's just changing the loop that you playing over and over. Always the worst case horror scenario where somebody backs into a room in the dark, bumps into something, right? This is what we play to ourselves when we are scared of the big C. I've dropped it, it's change. Do you want to drop another C? It's another life. And this live, I'm dropping the C bomb and it's changed, right? Changing the loop or changing the realities. Firstly, I suppose, establishing that you're aware this is happening. Because unfortunately, when it plays so often and so long, it becomes someone's reality, and they perceive because of that they cannot change. And why do we do it? Because actually it just keeps us safe. We're going to avoid the things that the worst case scenario if we've been playing in a loop at every cost, right? So the thing is that to change your reality, you need to change the loop. To change the loop, right? How do you do that? Physically changing your state, like talked about on Tuesday when it starts to kick in. And also thinking about your words. Break the loop by breaking your words. Change your loop, change your reality. And as you keep changing your story, you'll keep changing the reality you want, right? You can create the reality you want simply by changing your story. And like I finished off with, know that something can be so inbuilt in us that I'm aware that we don't even know the same CD track is playing until we become aware of it or tune in. And the important thing to remember and take from this live is that we are all going to play some loops over the next couple of months. We're all going to play some stories. We're all going to play some worst case scenarios. We're all going to be playing the casualty opening scenes of the worst case of how could this happen? How am I going to end up in A&E? And again, going back to some other lives, if you really think about a story, how many of them, when you play it on loop, if you've done it in other situations, have they actually come true? 0 is the answer when I've challenged clients on this, or myself, actually. If I ask somebody what the truth is, how many times has that really happened? A big fat 0. So worth bearing in mind that unless you are prone to be broken into in the middle of the night in a dramatic way and walk around your house backwards, then it's very rare that it's actually going to happen. Fingers crossed. So that was Change Your Story. I am back Monday. So I'm back Monday. Ooh. Monday's rest and digest. Ooh. How to get the best out of resting and digesting for your body. Until then, if I'm not seeing you at the park on tomorrow, I will see you soon. If I am, I'm sorry. Really. Have a great weekend, guys, and I will catch you all Monday.